Hello, hello.
Oops. I almost forgot about this part. Sorry. Hello, hello. My name's EC, and I like to have respectful conversations about nuanced topics. Today, we're going to be discussing Nana, because 707 is Nana Day, which was yesterday, and I love Nana. So I wanted to do a stream talking about some of the themes and controversies that are part of the series and the audience reaction years and years after it has premiered. Which was 20 years ago. Oh my god. I'm talking like I watched it at the time. I was a child, so I did not. But I was someone who did come into the Nanaverse a little bit later than a lot of people do. I didn't find it until after high school, and it was very moving for me. It was one of those shows that I watched and immediately needed to know everything about. And it also, the amount of rage, the amount of emotion that I had in response to that show, it tracks. It's about right. That's what happens with that show. It is a show that sounds like a very simple premise, but ends up moving you and is written so well. The characters are so profoundly explored that you care in a way you don't anticipate. You go in assuming you're not going to be that involved, and then you are. And that's what I love about the show. That's what, of the many themes about the show, that I think created the type of profound following that happened once it was released. There's, I think, new generations finding Nana every couple of years, and that's because the people who found it first and were really impacted by it when it came out in 1999 as a manga, serialized as a manga, never lost their candle for the show for the series. And then when the show it came out, was adapted into an anime when it was 2006, and I think premiered between 2006 and 2008. It absolutely affected just scores of people who probably would not have expected themselves to be so pulled in. I have watched a couple of deep dives or explorations of the show, even by people, or at least the adaptation, by people who assumed they would not care about it, but felt like it was too much of a phenomenon not to talk about. And even those people who had frustrations, sincere frustrations with the characters, still found themselves so involved in the story to the degree that, just like I did, they were getting up and yelling at their screens. So if you've ever watched Nana and you've ever just wanted to talk about it, jump in. I know we can have a conversation. I also wanted to talk about some of the more complicated themes within the show that, with time, we have the ability to see differently. But when it was originally released in 1999, it is a kind of helpful time capsule to remember what was seen as normal and how social expectations still worked at that era, that now seem reductive and also questionable. I am even going to explore the Nana's relationship and the possibility of, is it queer baiting, or is it a legitimate exploration of femme dynamics and friendships that may also be the early onset of a queer relationship? So if you are curious about exploring that idea, then definitely jump in. If you have never watched Nana, please let me know in chat. And if you don't know what the story is about, please let me know in chat so I can make sure not to exclude anyone who has been like, who's like, what is Nana? I've like it because I feel like we've seen all of the there we go. Sorry, I forgot to let everyone in Discord know that I was live. Okay, there we go. Sorry, that took a minute. But if you have never seen the show, or if you have been trying, like, kind of curious and seen all of the stories, the reels, the like inspiration, if you've ever been to an anime convention or a art fair, you've probably seen a lot of art that is the two nanas and them in often relationship dynamic style setups, depicted by fans of the show who are artists. And there is a very strong desire for both nanas to have ended up together. And the manga and the anime never were finished. They were left with a massively open ending. And if you read the manga, it does go a lot farther than what happens in the anime. And there are some things that happen in there that are gut-wrenching. So depending on what your, exposure to Nana is, you're going to perhaps have a different read of the story as a whole. But one of the beauties of how the story is developed and the characters developed is that even when decisions are made that you don't personally support, you can still see the complex components that led to those decisions being made. And I think that's one reason the series is so enduring, is because it actually looks at humans in a very accurate way towards how the combination of all their experiences builds up into stupid decisions that we'll make at various points of in our lives. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to talk a little bit about the quick synopsis of the basic gist of the show. I'm going to try and not give any major spoilers, just in case there's anyone here who has not seen it. But if you have, or if you're curious, please let me know in chat. I'm so curious. But, okay, so the manga and the anime adaptation both start off with the exact kind of very same storyline. There isn't any major changes between the two. The anime adaptation simply ends at a point that is earlier than the manga. But what ends up happening is the story takes place definitely, I think, in that it's relatively timeless, but it takes place definitely pre-social media, dominance of social media, and it gives a snapshot into a world that doesn't exist anymore. So if you watched the show at any point, or read the manga after the onset of social media's takeover of the world, it looks like a completely different world in many ways, because the internet has a place within the show, but it's nowhere near as powerful as the communities that the characters get themselves involved in. So the story follows two different nanas, Nana Komatsu and Nana Ozaki. Oh, wait. Yes. And I always mess up their names, but I'm just gonna check and make sure I'm not wrong. But let me see. Whoa. Yes, Osaki and Komatsu. Okay, cool. Just in case. I always worry about things like that, but here we go. So it follows two different nanas who are coming from small towns outside of Tokyo, where they have lived their entire lives and are coming to Tokyo on a train to explore the next chapter. They're both 20 years old and they have had radically different life experiences. They end up sitting next to each other by happenstance on a busy train that is stopped a couple of times because of the weather. It's winter, there's snow, and they are very different people. One Nana is very pink and shojo girly, very girly pop, very cutesy, very soft and pastel colors. The other is significantly more influenced by punk aesthetics. The punk subculture definitely is a big fan of the Sex Pistols, Sid Vicious, and wears a lot of Vivienne Westwood, which, hi Brant, hello, how are you? We're talking about Nana today because yesterday was Nana Day, which is July 7th because it is 707. It's the number on the Nana's apartment. So it is Nana Day officially. So we're there we go. So we're talking about Nana for that exact reason, and I wanted to explore some of the themes that show up in that show. Hi, Shadow. Hello. How are you? Some of the themes that show up in that show, and also kind of explore its effect all these years later, because I didn't realize it had come out in like 1999 originally, but here we go. It has definitely been a time capsule in a bunch of different ways. Brent, what is Nana? Oh, man. Okay, let me do a quick recap. Nana is a manga that came out in a shojo magazine in the 1999. And then and then it was adapted into an anime in 2006. And the anime became an immediate classic. It became very, very popular, and to this day is still extraordinarily popular. You cannot go to an anime convention, a art market, lots of different spaces that, especially if there's any correlation to the queer community or to alternative styles, without finding something Nana related in a vendor's booth. It's everywhere. It is one of those shows that I think super resonated with femme people and women and girls who are socialized as women and girls. And I'm always surprised. I'm always interested, because there are people who are like guys who will watch it and because they don't think it's for them, and then they watch it, and by the end they're deeply emotionally invested, just as invested as anybody who felt more naturally drawn to it or didn't have any societal expectations about whether or not they should watch it. And the show follows two 20-year-old girls who are moving to Tokyo from small towns and hoping to accomplish very different dreams. It is a coming-of-age story, but it does also deal with certain darker themes. And one of the Nanas is a punk rocker. She is a musician. She has a very specific style that, especially in late 90s Japan, would not have been as acceptable. Pre-internet was not as they had internet, but pre-social media was definitely not as socially acceptable. I think we often forget how much social convention worldwide expected a very specific type of presentation to be taken seriously, to be seen as respectable. You could still get kicked out of restaurants, of grocery stores, of different spaces if you looked too alternative, if you had tattoos, if you had piercings, and Nana had all of those things. So she's really defying a lot of the stereotypes or the conventions that were placed on her by society, and as well Japanese society in the late 90s. And then you have the other Nana. And this other Nana is somebody who more consistently fits conventions of what a woman is supposed to be like. She is very traditionally girly. She loves pink. She loves soft things. She loves pastels. She comes from a very different background, where the girly girl Nana, who is quickly nicknamed Hachi in honor and also as a bit of a jab, because the nickname comes from a dog that was waiting for his owner to return, I think after World War II, or in that kind of Reconstruction era, at a train station every single day, would come and wait for his owner to return, to the degree that he was memorialized in a statue. And he kind of represents loyalty and love and true commitment. But the Nana, who is nicknamed Hachi, is done so a little bit as if she is a bit of an annoying puppy who won't leave the other Nana alone. And so there is a lot of like kind of tongue-in-cheek sort of wordplay in the story itself. And the two Nanas end up accidentally sitting next to each other on a train bound for Tokyo. And as the train breaks down on their way there in the middle of winter due to the weather, they end up starting to get to know each other and sharing some, like not even secrets, but sharing minor details about themselves, never expecting to see each other again. Actually, though, what ends up happening is they end up becoming roommates, not by pure happenstance. And they end up having to learn how to live with another person. Hachi is from an environment where she has a full family, a mom, a dad, and a like kind of more suburban life, a younger sister who is full of energy and a lot of personality, who takes up a lot of space. And she's kind of the elder daughter who's just took care of herself, but was never for want of any material things truly. So she comes from a very different background from Punk Nana, and Punk Nana was orphaned at a young age after being abandoned by her mother, father, and eventually her grandmother when her grandmother passes. So she grows up an orphan and on her own, having to teach herself everything. And as a result, she's deeply independent. She's also somebody who's had to deal with certain much more difficult and darker experiences than Hachi has. And they are in very different mentalities about life and how goals should be approached in general. Hi, Riley. Hello, hello. Yeah, we're talking Nana today. Today is Nana. It's because yesterday was Nana Day. Today is Nana Day now. We're doing a redo. But yes. So I'm doing a bit of a kind of breakdown of what Nana was in the story in general. And Riley, have you ever watched Nana? I know that it's a show that a lot of people assume is targeted towards like women, girls, and femme people, but I think it has value for every person of any gender, no matter what, because it definitely is a well-written show. It gets you profoundly with the characterization and the exploration of how different characters exist. Oh my god, the storylines are things that are so they're so engaging, but they're also so emotive, like emotionally resonant. So the two Nanas have to learn how to live with each other. They have to learn how to survive in a place where they had sincere dreams about who they were going to be and what they're going to do. And then they're also dealing with the crushing reality of what it is to have a dream and try and live it. And one Nana is trying to come to the city and find her footing and become a successful musician. She was already part of a very successful band back in her hometown, but the bassist of that band, who was incidentally also her boyfriend, somebody she loved deeply, was given an opportunity to be part of a very successful band and left to go to Tokyo. And instead of going with him as was offered, she was like, I'm not going to just become your girlfriend supporting you on the side when I have my own dreams and my own goals. So I'm going to stay. And she did. Oh my gosh, Riley, you will remember if you watched it all the way through. It's one of those shows you feel it. You feel it, and every time you see it, every time you hear the music, you're like, oh, the emotions. Yes, Riley, that's a need. Oof. Oof. Yes. Okay. So on the other hand, so you have Nana, who has come to Tokyo to achieve her goals of maintaining her independence, not becoming a, I guess you could say, an accessory to her boyfriend's already found fame. And yay! I'm excited, Riley. It's gonna be so good. But yes, not to become an accessory to her boyfriend's already found fame, and to be able to pave her own way in life so that she can feel as an equal. She has no desire to force a relationship to be maintained with him as he has found success and moves, because she's too independent to want to force any type of situation that would require what do you call it? She has definitely has a lot of pride, and she knows that if he leaves, that will be the end of it. And so he does, and she lets him go, and then months and months and months and months, I think it's like a full year later, she decides to come to Tokyo on her own because she feels ready. And so she does, and she meets the Nana who she nicknames Hachi, and they end up becoming roommates and are exact opposites in personality, in personal taste, in approaches to life. Nana is very cynical and jaded and independent and gets frustrated with people who are incapable of making decisions. Hachi is extraordinarily indecisive and desperately trying to understand who she is. She's 20 years old and she's still trying to understand what life is supposed to be about, and hasn't really had much understanding of existence outside of how she's been defined by men in her life. So there is a very different sort of dynamic that Hachi has an approach to life that Nana does not. Nana refuses to be defined by the men in her life, whether or not their intentions are positive, and Hachi has, up to that point, largely been defined by men in her life whose intentions weren't fully positive. So, for example, Hachi, as a high schooler, ended up in a was groomed by an adult, fully fledged adult who was married and everything, and that was seen as she didn't recognize the difficulty, the danger, or what was wrong with that. She ended up moving to Tokyo to try and prove to her boyfriend that she was adult enough to be able to handle living on her own, and she wasn't an adult at all. And the story explores a lot about how Hachi's relationships and relationship internally to the concept of being in a relationship, being defined by the men around her, has a lot stronger effect on her versus on Nana, who refuses all of those expectations. And they end up becoming deeply, deeply close. And one of the core things about the story is also what happens when the two develop a relationship. There is a lot of desire and a lot of representation of Nana and Hachi as a queer couple in the audience response after the show aired, after the manga came out, because they have this deep closeness, this relationship that, for all intents and purposes, mirrors what happens when two women end up having their first queer relationship. A lot of the awkward experiences, the silly experiences, the struggles with social expectation, but because they never identify themselves as being in a relationship, and they don't even seem to recognize it, at least within the story themselves, it never gets explored properly. Instead, it's a why didn't that happen sort of situation. And a lot of people wish that they had confessed their feelings for each other and become an actual couple. Now, this is the one spoiler I can give, is that that's not really what happens. You see something very different take place, especially as each character matures and grows to recognize the agency and humanity of the other. They start out being a little bit codependent and becoming very involved in each other's lives and getting very invested in all of the minor ups and downs and the jealousies that can happen when you have a friend you hold very close who has other friends, who is exploring life and needing space and time themselves. And this is something that I think is really well done in the show, is they explore all of the different quiet, petty components of relationships that are often glossed over in most stories. You don't often hear the internal monologue that is what nobody wants to admit to on an external level to other people, other friends, when it comes to jealousy, when it comes to the incredible whiplash that can happen back and forth between, self-aggrandizement and intense self-consciousness and insecurity that can really tear a person apart or build them up the next second, which is, I think, a pretty common back and forth and seesaw that happens for a lot of people, especially at that age. Hi, hello, internet. Is this Genshin Impact? Hello again. I think you came into my life to ask me that last time. We're not talking about Genshin Impact today. We're talking about, actually, Nana, the anime, and the manga, although I'm pretty strictly talking about the anime right now because I have not read the manga and I am scared too. Because even though I know that the series has not, will probably not be concluded, I'm going to hold out hope just in case. But yes, so I'm doing a bit of a quick synopsis of the show and talking about the two Nanas and some of the themes that show up within it. There are definitely there are components of what happens in the show that can only happen at the place and time that the series was originally written in the late 1990s, early 2000s, which was a couple of years before it became an anime. And some of those things are related to how the music industry works. Some of those things are related to how music scenes worked. Some of those things are related to how social pressures affected people and how hard it could be to deprogram yourself from some of those expectations when there weren't online communities or like video essays or think pieces that could do these deep dives exploring various themes of things that you've seen. You have to read, at those points, you have to read things yourself and then go and have conversations with other people if you were able to. So the opportunity to deconstruct certain societal expectations wasn't as easy as it can be now if you are able to get out of the algorithmic bubble of your experience in the modern day. In the modern day, if you are like Hachi and you grow up in a space where there are a lot of societal norms that are a little bit more conservative in your day-to-day experience, and you have no reason to question those norms, it's a lot harder to. But if you are, I think, in the similar environment right now, there is more of an opportunity to exit your bubble and find opinions and thought processes from other people. So that's one thing I also think is so interesting about Nana when looking at it, when watching it, when I guess even reviewing it is very much a time capsule in terms of what expectation used to be and the power of it, how it quietly structures your entire mentality without you knowing it. So you see that represented really well in the way the two different main characters react to some of the same societal pressures. Both of them have the same pressure of needing to figure out how to get a job that they can keep, how to prioritize what matters in their lives versus what is easy versus what is engaging or fun. There's the way that either of the characters react to their goals being not as easy to accomplish as they had dreamed before they arrived in Tokyo, and recognizing when meeting some of their own heroes that some of their own heroes were not the heroes they thought they were. There is a lot of deconstruction that I think the story does in relation to social expectations behind certain people, certain presentations, certain assumptions. But there are also things that are, I will say before I finish that, that are done really well. And I think it's another reason the show has such an enduring fan base is because its core themes are very consistent throughout time, regardless of social media, regardless of whatever major conflicts or difficulties are happening in the world. The story still does tackle concepts that will hit you at any space in your life, especially that beautifully encapsulates a very specific era of time when people are trying to learn how to exist as independent beings and decide how much of what they've learned up until that point is actually necessary for them as they continue existence. Like, do you really need to maintain the same day-to-day schedule and structure as what you have had to live up till now? Or do you get to make a choice? And what's the value in any of the structure you have experienced versus what's unhealthy or dangerous or not useful about it? There's always a point in time in every single person's life where they have to make those decisions. And sometimes people react so intensely and in such an overwhelmed way that they end up in dangerous spaces. And other times they end up freeing themselves from really difficult environments and choosing to make something powerful and beautiful out of what could have been really difficult. So you see that type of thought process happening for both of the characters coming from very different places. For Nana, the one who grew up, the punk rocker who grew up in, an orphan and having been abandoned by everybody that she cared for, from a very young age, having to basically be an adult and being treated like an adult, she's already had to navigate a lot of those difficulties. And now she's at a point where she has a little bit more agency because she's seen as more capable of making decisions than she was when she was a child. So you also see a difficulty that she has with recognizing that she still can make mistakes, or that she can be wrong, or that she can be too stubborn in her mentality and isn't always willing to accept the help that she might need. And then you have the opposite. You have Hachi, somebody who grew up in a relative comfort, but emotionally pretty neglected. And the way that she tries to find emotional reward and fulfillment in other people, especially in men, because as she has been taught up until that point, that is what her role is to do. She gets rejected for it many times, but she continues to do it because she's trying to deprogram herself from it without actively recognizing the core of the issue. It's not until she lives with Nana that she realizes that there is more that she could do. And again, that comes back to that concept of, is it a queer relationship or is it queer baiting? Which is what I kind of wanted to talk about with this, like now that we've talked about some of the background, a little bit of the synopsis of the show. I had definitely, it was the most bare synopsis ever. I didn't want to get too deep into a lot of it because of the fact that it's really easy to accidentally give spoilers, and I don't want to do that. So, with Nana, there is this relationship between the two main characters that is definitely strained by their relationships with others. Nana, who is the punk rocker, and it's so funny to say like the punk rocker. That feels so silly. But yes, but with Nana, who is, I think, part of the punk subculture, she is so desperate not to be defined by relationships that she can struggle to recognize the value of the people around her. But she does end up being able to form a band and finding at least the beginning of success in a way that I don't think is possible now. If you look at the way that the music industry is presented in the show, would never happen now. There's definitely that kind of rags to riches sort of storyline that happens, not just for her, but also for the band and the member of the band that she is trying to prove herself to, whether or not she's consciously aware of it, which was the band that has her now ex-boyfriend in it, who left to be part of a successful signed band. And Hachi gets mixed up in a lot of this as well because she becomes Nana's number one fan and cares really deeply about every component. She's somebody who's very dedicated towards supporting Nana's dream. But in the process, does she get to have her own dream? Does she even know what it is? That's a question that gets explored in the show. And one of the themes that does show up in the show quite often is relationships and the ways that people use or react to relationships to avoid deeper, more like internal issues. There is we're going to get to this in like just a little bit, but there is another relationship that is extraordinarily controversial for a good reason because it's horrible, that is depicted without the same level of judgment that it should be, that is also it's treated as like a side story and as almost how would I even identify that? But yes, we'll get to that in a minute before I get too caught up in that idea. But there's another relationship that is very controversial and, in my view, very wrong, that is depicted positively or as just another kind of difficult relationship in the show that I think is also presented as a way to showcase how non-conventional relationships are just as part of growing up as the expectation and stereotype of finding a person and settling down quickly and having, the white picket fence and the family. And that's one thing the show does like to do as well, is explore this idea of what types of relationships are valid and which ones are truly independent, which ones are truly formed on mutual care versus which are formed in order to avoid deeper personal struggles. And I think that's the thing that Hachi, in my view, represents exceptionally well, is the frustration of watching a character do things that you may have done yourself as you made very immature decisions, or as she makes very immature decisions with people that she, from the outside, should know much better than to get herself involved with, or to react in the way that she does. But it's interesting to see how many people react with anger when it comes to Hachi. because she does start out very purposely as somebody who is quite immature and quite ridiculous and quite almost embarrassing in the decisions she makes that you, while watching, can look at the screen and start screaming at her for, because they seem so obviously bad. But when you're, I guess, 20, and for her, it's some of her very first relationships, people make really stupid decisions. And again, because the show operates as a mouthpiece for all of the thoughts that most people don't ever voice aloud, especially not to others, but many more people have than they would be willing to admit, there is a full, on full display exploration of all of the most petty to the most profound to the most excruciating components of what can go through your head as you're navigating relationships as somebody who maybe is toxic yourself or is in a toxic situation. And when that happens, it can be really hard to see at the time really obvious red flags. And it can also be hard to to understand why the people around you didn't see those red flags either, until you realize that they may have also been socialized with the same, maybe not as positive, maybe not as healthy social expectations. That's where we need to talk about. That's true, Brant. Brant says people make stupid decisions in relationships well beyond their 20s. 110% true. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And I think that's what I really, again, one of the many things that I like about this show is it tackles all of these concepts that in first presentation, when you first see it, you're like, it's not that deep. And then by the third or fourth episode, you're like, no, I was wrong. It is. There's so much more to this than I realized. And now I am embarrassed at my previous condemnation, because you start out, and I think this is purposeful, with a lot of judgment for each character based on whatever social norms you've internalized as an audience person, as a viewer. And as the characters develop and grow and make mistakes, you start to see the ways that you maybe held certain social judgments that you maybe weren't even aware of until you start getting angry at Hachi or Nana or any of the other characters in the show. So I'm going to have to look up real quick one more character, because there is a controversial, but like I said, I think it's fully wrong, relationship in the show that is very frustrating. Why is it doing this? Okay. Okay, so it, to me, depicts a Shin. There we go. Okay, yes. Okay. There we go. Right. So, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Okay, back we go. There we go. All right, sweet. So there's a relationship that I wanted to talk about that is depicted in the show, that with our understanding as a modern day audience, we can easily see as awful and also should never be idealized. But in the show, there's no judgment for this relationship whatsoever. This is one of the kind of side characters who is part of Nana's band. who is called the Blackstones. But this is one of the, I think it's a bassist. There we go. The bassist that gets recruited for Nana's band. Mind you, Nana is 20. Most of the other people in her band are in their 20s. Recruits a 15-year-old to be her bassist. And that 15-year-old comes from a very difficult background and is hinted at as keeping themselves basically alive and supported financially through possible sex work as a 15-year-old boy. And they kind of tease him for dating older women, but he's not dating. He's very purposely using like this industry to make enough money to live. He doesn't have his own place. He doesn't have a lot of his own anything. He has very little. And he ends up in a relationship with a woman in her mid-20s who is part of the band that Nana's boyfriend is from, or is in, and is like the kind of opposing band. And there's no question whatsoever in the show about this relationship between a 15-year-old and a woman in her 20s, especially because, again, it's a woman and a boy, a child, engaging in an adult relationship that is not possibly consensual because one of them is 15. But it's often kind of like glossed over. But even in the dynamics that are presented and why those two connect, it's because of difficulties navigating Japanese society being biracial. Both of them are half Japanese with a different backgrounds that are inherently going to make them have a harder time connecting and feeling accepted, even as like people within an alternative community of musicians. They still struggle to feel accepted, and to the degree that it even somehow makes it okay for both of them to connect even on a relationship level with each other, which is sad because it's still accurate to how a lot of relationships that are grooming like that can develop. You'll have somebody who feels self-conscious about themselves, who is a full adult and has not done the work they need to do to recognize that finding comfort with a child and a less mature person is in any way an option. But then you have an adultified child who has had to navigate really difficult situations and already been through intense amounts of trauma, connecting and feeling seen and respected by an adult for the first time. And it surprises me how in the show, it's one of the most controversial components. I hate using the word controversial for this. It's the component of the show that I actually hate the most, even more than the thing that gets the most people angry in the show. Because I feel like it is way too often glossed over as, well, it was a different time, because it was written in the late 90s. At least it was serialized. It may have been written even earlier. And there was certainly a lot less question at that point about especially successful musicians having relationships with children. I mean, it's the same era where the Red Hot Chili Peppers were singing songs about their high school girlfriends who they were bringing with them on tour across state lines without their parents' knowledge. I mean, it's just to a horrible degree. Yeah, Brant, you're 100% right. Still illegal even then, that's just, as Brant says, because it should have, it always should be, and it always should have been, but it socially didn't get the same level of pushback that it would and it does now. And I think it's interesting how, even in looking at this show that is so focused on relationships, it's also focused on portraying relationships that are realistic, even when they are wrong. And I do think there should be more judgment in how the show depicts the relationship, but it's, oh God, Brant, no, they did a lot. They have a lot of very, very, very. Okay, quick little tangent about the Red Hot Chili Peppers, because Brant says, I didn't know the Chili Peppers did that. Yes, Brant, and anybody else who's watching, the Red Hot Chili Peppers have a very, especially Anthony Kiedis, has a very long history of dating minors as an adult. Even now, like from every, like I don't think he's dated any. I don't think he's consistently dated any person who is over 30, even though he's in his 50s. His girlfriend now is in her early 20s. And he consistently, especially as a, younger man, when they were arguably still like rising to the top and at the probably the height of their careers, were very like comfortable harming women. To the degree that there was even an interview where the entire, like, that was televised, it was live, it was being transmitted all over the country. And the entire band started, there was a woman who was one of the interviewers, it was for a music show. And the entire band started crawling all over her and trying to tear her clothes off on air. And they do have a habit, especially Anthony Kiedis, but their whole band has been complicit in that process of and that's what they're willing to do on air. Imagine what they have done to all of the people who they've come in contact who won't be seen and who would be easily intimidated. Yeah, they actually even wrote a song about that one girl. She was 14 years old, and they wrote a song about dating a Catholic school child and how they didn't know that her that the big issue was that they had crossed state lines with her while on tour, and her father was a police officer. And so they portrayed it as a funny story of, oh no, I'm going to get caught. And when he did eventually, I think, have to deal with some pushback for that on a legal level, he said, oh, I didn't know she was 14. Thought she was 18. But he has a song that is about her being 14 and a Catholic school, high school child. So, yeah, Bran, it's bad. It's infuriating. But I think that also is emblematic of the mentality at the time that you see represented in this show, which is, again, why I keep referencing it as a time capsule, because there are certain dynamics in the show, in the relationships, especially the very unhealthy kinds of relationships people can get themselves involved in, especially as they're first exploring relationships and one's agency, one's power within it, and realizing how, your own upbringing and the way that you navigate everything from your space in society due to racial bias, due to social economic status, due to, I guess, like parental status and involvement, due to the intensity of pressure towards satisfying societal expectations. All of those things are very important in any relationship, from friendship to a romantic relationship. And all of those concepts are explored in this show. Unfortunately, the decision to explore the way that race can impact and isolate a person in a space that is very homogenic, like in Japan, was explored through a relationship that I don't even think should qualify as a relationship, and I think should qualify as predation. But the commentary made was not, even with that, is still not invalid in the specific difficulties that were being navigated. That doesn't mean that the adult and a 15-year-old kid should be having a relationship of any kind that is anything but, like, at most maybe friends, or really, or I don't know, not even that, even as just like opposing band members. But yeah, there is there is still, I think, it doesn't invalidate the fact that the characters that were drawn together because they felt excluded from other forms of connection due to the fact that they had another racial bias to navigate that their peers didn't, is still valid. That is what I mean specifically. But I think that's also something that within the show it explores. It just could be significantly more critical of. I do think that relationship is idealized a little too much. But let's get back to talking about the concept of, like, the Nana and Hachi dynamic, and also how the show explores the concept of queerness, because I think what I've kind of quietly been, like, exemplifying with the different relationships that I have highlighted is that the show does kind of purposely want to explore relationships that don't fit the societal convention, and that when a person is in a space where they feel as if societal convention is overwhelming and all encompassing, once you decide to break out of that expectation, the spectrum of what seems acceptable or worth questioning can become a lot bigger than what you might assume. Hey, how are you? Hello. Happy late Nana Day. It's the day after Nana Day, but it's Nana Day revisited today. I'm doing a stream talking about the anime Nana because yesterday was 707, which is Nana Day. But yeah, how are you as well? And if you haven't seen Nana, please let me know. I will try and do a little quick spark notes. But yeah, so the show kind of explores all the different ways that, like, societal expectation and pressure can also mean that when people start questioning that pressure and those expectations and decide to leave that social contract behind, it can end up in spaces that it probably shouldn't, because some people do start questioning all forms of regulation in regards to certain relationship dynamics and certain conformity expectations. And some of those expectations are there for a reason. For example, the relationship I just identified, which was Shin and... Okay, must watch. 110%. Okay, definitely need to watch. Okay, so... where do I start? Quick recap. Nana is a anime that was made in 2006 that was adapted from a manga that was written in 1999, or at least in 1999, and it follows two different 20-year-old women named Nana who accidentally end up connecting as they are traveling to Tokyo to escape some of the struggles they had in the small towns they grew up in, and are hoping to achieve their dreams by moving to the big city. Through a bit of a series of misadventures, they both end up as roommates, and they could not be more opposite if they tried as people. Both are named Nana, but they are like opposite sides of the same coin. For clarity's sake, one is nicknamed Hachi, the other maintains her name of Nana, and they have the kind of, you've seen artistic representations of them all over the place. They have definitely, the show itself, I think every couple of years it gets rediscovered by either a new group of people or by people who have decided to watch it again after coming across it at a much earlier point in life. And the emotional power of the show is strong enough that even on rewatches, if you've already seen it or if you're watching it for the first time, it still is able to really grip an audience anew after every watch. So it has an incredible staying power, and it is one of those shows that stays with you a lot longer after it's been seen, especially because it does not have a definite ending. So a lot of people have been deeply frustrated by the fact that there isn't a definite ending, but it also is one of those shows that has people from all different kinds of backgrounds who maybe come into the show with assumptions because of the genre of what the show is and the fact that it centers on two women, as, you know, assuming you either aren't going to get super into it or emotionally invested, or it's like a silly drama, end up like very deeply emotionally invested by the end, because the character development and the story build, like the world building, the story building hits all of these very realistic and I think universal truths and difficulties about growing up as a human being, and even the mistakes that people can make at any era of their lives, but are a little bit more common when you are transitioning from like late teen to adult and you're trying to navigate all of the pressures without having any place to return to recalibrate the way that you maybe would if you were a teenager and you had some form of safety net behind you. And this show explores what happens for people who have grown up without any safety net, and then people who have grown up with a very suffocating safety net, trying to figure out what actually matters and what types of lessons and what types of structures from their upbringing are actually necessary for life when they get to make their own choices. Some of those choices are what is going to have you screaming at your screen. Some of those choices are things that you find yourself quite proud of them at certain points. But I think that's the whole thing, is the show explores a realm of things that often, especially at that point, you didn't really see presented. A lot of the inner monologues of people in a way that people have, you maybe have had in your own brain, and that a lot of people have probably navigated as well, of that you think are unique insecurities. And the show does a really good job of exploring where those insecurities might come from, how they develop, and how they maintain themselves until the right decisions are made to break out of those expectations. So basically, it explores how cyclical patterns can trap you in certain environments, or you can recognize those patterns and free yourself to try new things. And all of the different characters in the show have different moments of maturity and immaturity, and it's just a very realistic depiction of what is a coming-of-age tale, but also centered through the kind of structure of the narrative framing being that you have these two women who are living together, who are complete opposites in every way. One of them is a punk who is trying to find a success in the music industry. The other has no idea what she wants to do, but has only really ever been trained to be a housewife and is trying to decide what she wants in real, like now that she doesn't directly have that pressure on her. And so you can see how there's certain conflicts of expectation that happen. One of them is extraordinarily independent, the other isn't. And they start to balance each other out in various ways, but they also hold each other back in others. And there are a lot of different kinds of relationship dynamics that are explored in the show through the eyes of the two main characters. But they're also giving, I think, a really huge spectrum of what navigating difficulty without any support system for the first time can really be like. And they even tackle some concepts that are, I think, a little bit harder or at least were not as realistically depicted in a lot of other shows at the time, because those kinds of details are often seen as boring or embarrassing, or would make a character too unlikable. But instead, with this, the show and the story recognizes that you don't always have to like the characters to still resonate with them. Because most of the time, when any of the characters on screen are doing something you don't approve of, a lot of times it's a mirror of self. And it sounds like it's, that might be a bit of an intense interpretation until you watch the show. And then you understand why there are now legions of people who can never get over it. And you see Nana art everywhere. And it renews popularity every couple of years because it is really helpful for processing, I think, any major change in life at multiple eras of life. And the way that you rewatch the show as you grow does change as your maturity becomes more structured and nuanced and experience-based over time. So you interpret the characters differently. You see components of the relationship dynamics differently. You can spot red flags very differently, and it also can resonate in your own life. So I think that's what the show does really effectively. And there's another component that I, kind of talked about a little bit, but again, is the representation or the possibility of queerness in the show. So one thing I kind of started on was the idea that with that early stage of being released from the social expectations placed on you by your caregivers, by whatever authority figures had sway or power over you when you were younger, by, your parents, when you move out on your own the first time and you get the opportunity to truly make your own choices, but also have to deal with the very negative consequences of what happens when there's no one to catch you if you fall, or if you can't meet adult expectations, people can start questioning all layers of what they used to hold as necessary. And when that happens, sometimes that can lead you into spaces that maybe socially are not seen as acceptable. So especially with queerness in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s in Japan, from what I can gather, it doesn't sound like there was, definitely not the type of social environment that we have today. People didn't want to openly acknowledge those things if they were not 110% sure they were in the community and there was no other alternative. Whereas if you're in a space of questioning, it's socially so unacceptable. It was socially so unacceptable that a lot of people just pushed past those experiences. And I think that's what's really interesting about the show Nana is it explores how that can happen and how difficult it can be to recognize, especially if you're a younger woman or if you're a younger person who is trying to define if you actually are queer or if you have a relationship dynamic you can't quite explain with somebody who's supposed to be just a friend. It's actually quite validating to watch their connection, the Nana's connection in that show, because yeah, Brent says, well, in the 90s, even in here in the US, Ellen DeGeneres' coming out was huge and not well received. Exactly. In that era of time, coming out could be the end of a career. It could mean, there were still laws up until 2013 that criminalized homosexuality or any sexuality, or even still a lot of laws now that criminalize as well being involved in any manner of in the LGBTQIA spectrum. It's infuriating and exhausting, but it definitely would mean that there's a lot of people who never explored or allowed themselves to even examine any possibility of queerness when they got to a point in life where they could have perhaps actually explored it fully. And in this show, you have these two Nanas who are such opposites, who nobody would put together as friends, let alone as lovers. But their dynamic is so deeply romantic in how they love and care for each other. There's even, kind of comments about it in the show that are made to highlight the immaturity of one of the characters, because she doesn't realize how realistic that is, how possible it could be if she was willing to defy the social conventions that she has internalized her entire life to actually explore. Brant says gay marriage could even be illegal here soon. Yeah, I know, exactly. We're definitely sliding horrifically backwards when it comes to even basic acceptance of people. I mean, it's like it should never be controversial if somebody is trans, if somebody is queer, if somebody is gay, if somebody is like it's literally like should not be a unprotected part of existence. It never should have been. And the fact that it is even possible to rescind that is infuriating, because it's the Constitution missed a lot, and the Bill of Rights missed a lot, but unalienable rights, that is one of them. Exactly, Ella. Yes, human rights shouldn't be up for debate. I agree wholeheartedly. Absolutely. And it's infuriating as well that people will kind of misidentify, will try to reduce the importance of that into identity politics. It's not identity politics. It's the livelihood and the existence. It's the survival of huge swaths of the population, and the safety and health of everyone involved. I mean, everyone. Like, if queerness is illegal, everyone suffers. Even the people who are... I hope so, Brant. Brant says Congress is in a better place to pass a law in favor of it. They better. I hope so. But yeah, I think that is one of the most infuriating components of it, is that When, like, straight people suffer as well when queerness um, is demonized, because it forces horrific uh, expectations around gender presentation, around societal expectation, around what type of expression is even allowed based on gender and the possibility. I mean, there's so many things go so cruelly wrong when they shouldn't be. That, yes, you absolutely should not ever. Brant says, as if the right leadership is in place, it could be solidified. Yeah, I mean, it infuriates me that this is ever even a votable component of our society, because to me, queer people have always been here. We're not going anywhere. It will never disappear, whether or not it's legislated or not. But the harm that you can cause by legislating in opposition to the basic existence of your own people it's sickening. It's sickening, and it's stupid. And it's wrong. And it's not even a question. It's just such, like, I shouldn't have to say any of this, because it shouldn't be something that we even have to consider as a concern. It should just be a accepted component of our world. That's not something that's not up for debate. It's not up for questioning. It just isn't. So, I also think it's extraordinarily stupid that when it comes to, basic sex ed, we don't include the very, what should be very normal conversations about gender expression and how that is just as important towards development. It it just boggles my mind that it's not a normal integrated part of any curriculum. But at the same time, I was taught abstinence by my football coach, so I should probably, I mean, I know, and then that, that was far too recent to be like, I mean, I would have understood if it was the 50s, but it wasn't the 50s. I'm not that old. It's infuriating that that was even allowed to happen at all, but here we are. But yeah, Brent says it's crazy it can be taken away, especially by the courts. Yeah, agreed wholeheartedly. I think, well, again, I think that's why shows like Nana are important, because what they do is they do show how, even if whether or not it's fully purposeful, it shows what can happen when there is even, when there is that kind of more conservative expectation that queerness is not an option. You have these two people who seem to be very well suited to each other, who seem to care deeply about each other, who seem to resonate and even be attracted to each other. But because they are of the same sex, there is not even a question for them to explore if they are indeed comfortable with a relationship. Instead, you have both of them struggling intensely with their relationships to the opposite gender and the social expectations that come with that as being in a heteronormative relationship, when one of them desperately doesn't want the societal pressure from being in a heteronormative relationship, and the other doesn't know how to operate as an independent person unless she's in one of those relationships. She doesn't know how to operate as an independent person. She doesn't know how to allow herself to be a separate being her only time beginning that process of exploration is when she's with Nana, Hachi and Nana. But I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to give away what happens, but it's definitely the relationships they end up in end up also shifting what they're able to accomplish on a maturity level, on a life path level. Everything of it is affected by their ability to even explore queerness, which is, I think, also one reason that the show does sometimes get cast as a queer baiting show a little bit, because of the fact that you have this, will they, won't they? I mean, they're roommates, and it's like the classic trope of they were roommates when you've got this like fully fledged, very strong relationship between two people who are either of like the same gender or not fitting traditional gender stereotypes. And yeah. Oh, Ella's saying, lucky I've never fit in with society, so being accepted was never something I factored into my existence. Well, that's exactly the thing, Ella. And will say that's one thing that I kind of, I guess, briefly touched on a minute ago with the concept of what happens when you are either removed from societal expectation because you inherently cannot fit societal structures and expectations, or you are removed from the environment that pressures those expectations on you and you actually get to make your own choices for the first time. Your opportunity to explore can be so much more expansive, and it can completely deconstruct any of the societal pressures you previously assumed were ironclad rules. I love that. Brant says they have no right to accept you. You are part of society and the community. End of story. Yes, 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 yes. I do love that. It's not about whether or not people have a right to accept you. It is just a fact that you are part of the community. You are part of society. There is no like acceptance or non-acceptance that should be determined by somebody else. Should be self-determined. Okay, I won't, Trey. Trey says, don't spoil it too much. I'll check it out. Okay, so I'm trying really hard not to spoil it. So then one reason I am still being, and I'm fully aware I'm being exceptionally vague with a lot of these kind of comments, is because I can't get too deep into the specific relationship dynamics in the show without getting to a point of accidentally letting slip certain things. So I'm trying, but it's like not a day revisited today. So I had to talk about it. I had to. But yes, I love that, Ella. Yes. Live as myself or be miserable. It was never a choice as far as I see it. I think that's, well, yes. And I love that you also recognized that living as yourself was the right choice for you. And that it wasn't a choice, it was the only option for you. Unfortunately, there are people, and again, this is explored in the show, where you have one person who refuses to bow to societal expectations and ultimately is able to forge her life into what she had hoped for, and that discovers that her original dreams maybe had more to them than she realized. But she was able to accomplish far beyond what she expected. The other didn't think she could. And you see the ways that being miserable becomes the choice that she struggles with, because it is a choice for her, because she cannot conceive of fully deconstructing in the way that would allow her to simply exist with confidence. And that struggle is a huge crux of the show, of like, one person doesn't see it as a choice. It is simply what is, because the other option is so horrible, and the other can't decide if she's willing to let go of what would make her miserable in favor of what would make her accepted. So, yeah, I think that's yeah. There's so many different ways that with the show you can explore these deeper themes and find different spaces that the, the show does actually exemplify, and the types of patterns that show up in the decisions made by the characters that maybe within the show itself, in the context of the show itself, doesn't directly correlate, but the themes and the patterns themselves are actually really relatable to a lot more situations than are directly depicted on screen. Oh, yes, Ella, I'm so sorry. I was talking about Nana, the anime, and of the manga as well, which the anime was released in 2006. The manga was released in 1999, and the anime is a direct adaptation of, or largely direct adaptation of that manga. So what you end up what ends up happening is it is in its own way a bit of a time capsule of the late 90s and the early 2000s, in a way, in an era that is hard to imagine now because there's no social media. The internet is there, but it has not any level of power that it does now. So seeing it from the perspective of our world now, it's wild. It's kind of wild. For certain generations of people who grew up with it, it's nostalgic because it's familiar. For, I think, newer people coming in, it's a little like, wow, that's how that worked. So it's I think really beautifully and unintentionally in that way explores how there are these universal themes that transcend technology, transcend time, that just are inherent in humanity, no matter one's social background or experiences, even in spaces that maybe have different societal pressures. You still see themes that are going to resonate across the entire world. Yeah, I super recommend it. It is definitely one of my favorite shows. There are certain components, like certain relationship dynamics that I do not support within the show. That you will, as soon as you see it, you'll be like, oh God. That I do think were not critiqued as obviously within the show, probably because of the era in which it was written. And trying to think of how to identify what that dynamic is without spoiling a story arc. I don't know. But there is, yeah. So there. I guess keep an eye out for those things. You'll be able to see it as quickly as it happens. And then once you see it, please come back and let me know how what you think or if it frustrated you. I actually would love it if anybody who was jumped in tonight and is like, okay, wait, hold up a second. What is this? Let's watch it. Please let me know when you have so that we can talk about it, because I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it without having to worry about spoiling things. So, yes. Oh, thanks, Ella. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, okay. Basically, I guess what I can say is there is definitely a relationship that is not critiqued. There's more than one relationship that's not critiqued the way that it should be because of the age differences between the characters. That is what I will say. And I think the gender of one of those relationships where, which the age of the younger person and is not critiqued the same as it would be if that person was like if the dynamic was older man, younger woman, or younger girl, child, versus the dynamic that is at play, which is older woman and boy who is a kid. Yeah, Ella, I know, and it infuriates me. It's so weird. It's so frustrating how there are certain components that just aren't questioned and are normalized. And I'm like, why is this still a thing? I think we know better now, right? Um, I know that that could be an entire discussion. That could definitely be an entire discussion. Like, why is it that in anime there are certain tropes that are not questioned that should be? Why is it so common to have like kind of horn dog characters that are weirdly interested in their own family members? Or any femme presenting person like that? What? Why is that okay? um, Concerning, I think. But yeah, I definitely really do not appreciate. I don't enjoy or appreciate or um really know what to do with that when I see it in animes. I often can't make it through most animes where that is a consistent trope. Um, but that's just me. So I definitely have turned off certain ones that I've been told, oh, you'll love this. And then I see from the get go, it's like, oh, that. Why? Why is that there? There is a. How old is that man? And that person is supposed to be how old? How old is that person? And that person is supposed to be how old? And it's like, no, wait, no, I'm not gonna. I don't know if I want to watch that. So yeah, but I, yeah, I struggle a lot with that. What was it? Elfen Lied. I really, really, I watched that when I was in middle school, and I loved it then. It was very profound for me at the time. And then I tried to rewatch it because I think I'd blocked out the parts where she like the main character kind of turns into a I don't know what to call that, but turns into a fetishized stereotype. Um and I couldn't watch it. I couldn't get through it. Couldn't make that happen. So, yeah, I don't know. Hi, Aqua. Hello, hello. It's okay. It's okay. We had a very tame discussion today. We talked about Nana. Yeah, Ella. I think Ella says I know it's a societal thing too, but yeah, I agree. It's tough to figure out where to stay, like where to be with that, because I know what my own personal comfort is, and I also um I don't think that there is ever really much of an excuse for being too comfortable with that type of dynamic. Um yeah. Yeah. Oh no. Okay, it's fine. Yeah, yeah. But yeah. Um, Let me think. I oh my God. Yes. Ninja Scroll. Ninja Scroll, definitely. Paradise Kiss. 100%. That one's on YouTube. Yeah, have you seen it? Ah, I just finished it. Ninja Scroll, Paradise Kiss, Cowboy Bebop, of course. Gundam 00, Pluto. Do I need to write these down? I feel like I'm sorry. I'm just like blah, 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 blah. Why is my brain not operating? 86. It's harder to find right now. For some reason, it was taken off of Crunchyroll. Oh my God, you've got to watch 86. It's so good. It's oh yo. It's one of those. I will say. I think a couple of the anime that I've recommended are the Fate series. What is the Fate series? Okay, wait. Now I have to write this down. Do you happen to know the whole title, or is it just called the Fate series? I want to know. Ooh, I love that. Um, Fate Zero. Oh, Thank you. Ooh, I love the art. Oh man. Oh, Revolutionary Girl Lieutenant. That one too. I see. That's cool. Thank you. Okay, I'm finding. Oh, it's on Crunchyroll. Okay, cool. That is one of the only um streaming services I still have. So, ooh, that's exciting. That's exciting. Revolutionary Girl Lieutenant is on YouTube, I discovered. So, The Rose of Versailles, that's a good one. Hmm, Always Full Metal Alchemist. I actually like both of them. I know Brotherhood is the most more what do you call that? It's the most highest rated. But I actually like both of them. Um, yeah, they are expensive, and I'm looking for alternatives to Crunchyroll as well because I know that Crunchyroll was recently bought by, I don't remember which the name of the company is, but they were recently bought by another company, and they have ties to contributing to genocide, and I don't want to do that. As much as I can avoid that, I would like to avoid contributing to that as much as possible. So, yeah, so I'm trying to find alternatives. So if you do have any recommendations, I guess, in regards to streaming platforms or spaces, that'd be great. But yes, okay, so let me see. What did I get so far? Oh yeah, I already said Pluto. Wait, Ninja Scroll. Just finished one recently that was really good. Vampire Hunter D, of course. God, what else? Looking at the books that I have to see if any of them have anime adaptions. Darn. I am gonna remember all of like 10 more after the stream is over. But this is why you should join my Discord server so I can leave lists, anime recommendation lists, and we can all add to them together to make a massive anime master list. Yeah. So if you haven't yet, please don't forget to subscribe, and please don't forget to join my Discord as well. I do like movie nights on, like watch parties on Sundays, and then I stream on Wednesdays. And if you have like topic recommendations or ideas you'd like to have explored, or you are curious about something and want me to do a deep dive into it, let me know. So far, we've done some pretty interesting like explorations. Like I did one on the history of like computer development over time. We went all the way back to the abacus and then looked all the way through time to meta glasses. Oh, that's totally understandable, Ella. I am trying to yeah, I am trying to transfer to a stoat, but it is pretty hard to transfer a Discord community to a stoat, so, or to any other spaces. So, I think I'm a little stuck with Discord right now because I also wanted to get off of Discord for my concern for privacy violations for just users in general. Especially because it's owned by I keep wanting to call them Pyrotechnic. It's not Pyrotechnic, Palantir. And I, in whatever way I can, I don't want to contribute to their surveillance. So, yeah, getting off of Discord is pretty difficult, but I guess it's the best space for now. Yeah. But I don't think you can hear my little Nana music I have in the background, but like the every once in a while I'll hear more of the Nana music, and it's from the soundtrack, and it'll just like hit different emotional points in my brain, and it'll remind me of various things. I'm really excited for everybody to watch the series if you haven't. I think it's so worth it. I think it has so many universal themes that are absolutely worth exploring. And I would love to have a chance to just kind of go deep and discuss all those different concepts together. So if you haven't, please don't forget. I wonder if you can watch it on the Internet Archive. I'm not sure if I can find a link that does have that. I will put it in the Discord. If I can't, I apologize. You might have to find a way to stream it or to find it on someplace. But yeah, I super recommend it. And I think if we're going to kind of finish off this generalized idea about Nana in general, if it is queer baiting or if it's genuine exploration, I am going to tend on the side of genuine exploration. That was a very long way to explain and explore that idea, but that is where I'm going to leave with it, because as you'll find out when you do watch the series yourself, I do think it is a realistic depiction of what happens when societal convention creates barriers that are hard to transcend and can even unconsciously limit you from the true kinds of connection that could be explored if you're willing to deconstruct. So, oh, is it? I think so, Ella. It probably is. I would assume it is. I think so. But yeah, I love that. Yay! I'm so glad. Thank you so much, everybody, for jumping in. And if you do end up watching it, please let me know in Discord or drop a comment on my community page on YouTube, and we can revisit this next stream, or depending on where you are in the series, or we can revisit it at any point. I would love to have another opportunity to talk about it. Even do like, as you're going through it, and if there's things that you want to navigate together, I would love to do that. So let me know in my community page or by... Thank you, Ella. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. I guess I try. Yeah, absolutely, of course. But yeah, I'm still working on my most recent video. It was ultimately a little bit longer than I had originally planned. I thought I was going to do something a lot faster than the last one. But there have been a couple of little things, stuff happening, of course, at home to make things a little bit slower on the video editing and processing end. But I will be getting that out as soon as I possibly can. So, hopefully I will have my video out soon. But yeah, and it does explore a couple of different unexpected connections in related to synthetic luxuries, which I did have a live stream on. I think it was week before last, but I was able to dive a little deeper and find even more unexpected connections. So I am really excited for that video to be out. And I am very curious as to what you all think after I've done my little deep dive. So yeah, let me know. If you weren't there for the live stream, totally fine. It's recorded, it's on YouTube. But if you want the, I guess, the deep dive version that has a little bit more context and ties to areas that we only barely touched on in the stream, then stay tuned. But yeah, all right. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to say good night for the night, and I will see you all again either on Sunday for our next watch party. Oh, yes, Mark, thank you so much. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, 110% yes. Yes. Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Mark. I love it. Thank you so much for recommending that. Openly queer characters, we love it. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mark, for that last minute fantastic recommendation. All right, I will see you all. Oh, how do I end the stream. Is this a possibility for me to even do? Are we gonna just be here forever? Maybe. Okay. Anyways, sorry. Good night. Bye.